Metadata indexes, particularly how they're represented in XML. In all of the topics that we go into detail about the access structures, I'll focus on the XML implementation because that's our tool set. Certainly all of these concepts can be implemented in a variety of media, but we'll focus on XML. So metadata indexes. A metadata index takes one element or attribute from the items themselves and sorts all of those items by that element or attribute. So each element, for example, might have a title, and we might create an alphabetical index of titles of those, did I say element? I meant item, sorry. Each item might have a title, and we can create an alphabetical index of titles of items simply by sorting all those items by the title, right? So all the A titles will come to the top, all the Z titles will go to the bottom. And that metadata index, in effect, doesn't really exist. I have it sitting here as an index because we represent it as an index, but in fact, all it is the items themselves, and the index is created at the time we sort the items and produce some sort of alphabetical list of those items. Let's see, so you can see, for example, on your screen here in image number 1, there's a schema representation. And for the purpose of this particular discussion about metadata indexes, let's not worry too much about what's under the body. We'll get into what's under the body a little bit later. Right now, just focus on the what says section, ID, date updated, and title. So in that little package of what's inside of an item, and in this case, our items are the sections, so each section is an item, you can see that we could pretty easily alphabetize them by title. Right? We could do that by hand, or we could do that automatically. We could also numerically organize them by the date they were last updated to get them in date updated order. And we can do that either in ascending order from earliest date to latest date, or descending order from latest date to earliest date. And obviously with the text strings inside title, we can do the same thing. Ascending or descending order, we can sort them either numerically if they're numbers, or by text if they're text strings. So that's the way it works inside of the schema. The schema represents the item. The item has certain elements and attributes that are amenable to being sorted. Any of those items that are amenable to being sorted are potential keys for creating an index. Or, yeah, you can call them a key. Potential targets for creating an index, let's say. And so the more basically text strings and numerical values you have in your item, the more possibilities there are for indexes. Of course, we don't create indexes willy-nilly. We create them on the basis of what we think the user knows versus what they want to know. So if they have no idea of the titles, there's really no reason to create a title index, because there's no reason they would go to that title index trying to get to the item, because they're not aware of the titles. Okay, so that's the way it looks inside of the schema. Let's take a look at how it looks inside of the instance. I'm going over to image 2 here. And you can see that I've circled the two things that are really our best focal points for creating indexes: the date and the title. And now you can see, by the way, why XML represents dates in such a, to some people, a funny way. We have in the date the year, then dash 2 digits for the month, then dash 2 digits for the day. That puts the high order, the biggest pieces, the years, up front, just the way any other number is. So when we write numbers, we write them from left to right, with the high order parts of the number on the left and the low order parts of the number on the right. If we try to sort numerically by the way a date is represented usually in the United States, day, month, year, month, day, year, we'd have a very hard time, because that's completely scrambled. So either internally, either internally, most systems will represent, internally, all systems will represent their dates in this high order, low order format. On the surface, you may see them in many formats, and in fact, in XML, we have to represent them. If we call them dates or dates and times, we have to represent them this way. But we have the option, when we display them to users, to manipulate them and massage them and make them in a more user-friendly format. So these are our two targets. We certainly could sort on the ID. The ID is a text string. but I'm not sure exactly what it would get us to sort on IDs. Possibly if we were managers, we might have the ID and we might need an ID index as managers of the information to get to the item that we want to get to. Possibly, but generally speaking, we wouldn't even do that. Generally speaking, the IDs are too far behind the scenes. Okay, so you can see that each one of these items has a date and a title. If some of the items have a date and a title and some of them don't, our index isn't going to be very good. I don't know if you remember, but a while ago we talked about the assumption that users have that indexes and hierarchies are comprehensive. It's not some items that show up in this index or in the hierarchy. It's all the items. It's a comprehensive view. And so if I go to a book index and I don't see a term, I'm going to assume that term's not there. Not that somebody forgot to include it in the index, or not that some items or some sections of the books are indexed and other sections of the books aren't indexed, right? That doesn't make any sense. So we want to work with elements that are required in order to get to create indexes, because those will create a comprehensive index of in this case either titles or dates. So that's the instance. Let's take a look at the schema. Excuse me, that's the instance. Let's take a look at the transform in picture number 3 here. You can see that the main thing that's going on here is it's really a very simple one. We have this idea, and you'll see this over and over again in our transforms, that we have a UL, that's an unordered list, that's a bullet list, surrounding a for each statement. So on the outside of the for each statement is the definition, this is going to be a list. On the inside of the for each statement, there's an LI, which is a list item, which creates all of the bullet items in the list. This is a recurring theme that you'll see over and over again in our transforms, that the outside element is bracketing, in this case UL, sometimes it'll be a table, is bracketing a for each loop, and so we're going to have one bullet for each what? For each section here. We're going to have one bullet for each section, and each section is going to be sorted by what? Take a look at line number 16 and you'll see each section will be sorted by its title. So we'll get an alphabetical sort. It turns out that if you don't say what direction, it'll be ascending. If you don't say what kind, it'll assume a text sort. And so this is right there. The only other thing to think about is inside of the LI, we have a link, right? That's a link. It's an ahref, and it's linking to a particular place on this page. And I'll show you how the output looks in just a moment. But I want you to notice those aspects of this. First, there's the container, the UL containing the LIs, and the for each is for each section. We're going to create a bullet, and then the bullet is going to contain a link. This is a common theme in indexes, that our index contains a list of whatever we've indexed on, keywords, titles, dates, whatever, and then there's a click. There's something that you do to access the full record, to get to the full view, in this case, of a section. So we click on one of these keywords. In this case, we click on, the title of the section, and we click on the title of the section, and it takes us to the section. Okay, finally, let's look at the, oh, and by the way, something to recognize about the instance is there's nothing different about this instance because we're making a metadata index. The metadata index does not even exist until this transform comes along. We just have a bunch of items, they happen to have titles. When we run this transform against the instance, now we have something that we can call an index. That won't always be the case. We'll see in other instances that we have to add something to the instance to make the index work. But in this case, we don't have to add anything to the index. We just get it for free from the fact that some of our attributes and elements are easily sortable. Okay, so if you look at screen number 4, you'll see an output. You can see that we have a bullet list. You can see that the titles of the sections are in the bullet list. And by the way, you probably see this in the topic. I'll only say this once, but it's true for all of these topics, that there's sample files of the index, the instance schema transform and output that you can download and look at as we go through here, and it'd definitely be worth your while to do that. So in this output, we have the titles of all the sections, and those titles are clickable. When you click the title of a section, in this case, you're going to go to a different piece of the page, because the way that I organize this transform is that all of the indexes that we're going to look at, as well as the sections that are indexed, are all going to be on the same single web page, so that it's easy to see everything all at the same time. And so these links are internal links to a different part of the page, and that's how the metadata index works. Very simple index, really easy to create. Just a few lines of code in a transform and you have all of your items sorted by whatever quality they have that's sortable. And with a few other lines of code, you can format that into HTML and away you go.